Give it like 30 seconds or so here. Really happy to have you with us today. Thank you for making the time for us. We'll hopefully make this well worth your while. All right. Okay. So we're really excited to have you join us today for our Financing and Deploying Clean Energy Certificate Program info webinar. And we should just go ahead and jump right in. I think this is going to be a nicely packed hour, hopefully nice and informative for you all. And first, I'm going to start out with a quick overview of really like what we're doing here today. So if you could jump to the next slide. While this agenda is up, I'm just going to rattle off some really quick intros for our team here. So I'm Trent Cummings, Online Programs Delivery Manager here at the Yale Center for Business and the Environment. We recognize that's a bit of a mouthful, so we like to say CBAE. So if you hear me say CBAE throughout the rest of this, or my colleagues say CBAE, that's what that means. I'm joined by my colleague, Rob Klee, lecturer at the Yale School of the Environment and Managing Director of Clean Energy Programming here at CBAE. And I'll note that if and hopefully when you join the program, Rob will actually be the first lead faculty member that you'll learn from in our Clean Energy Policy course. So really happy to have Rob here with us. Up next, we have Heather Daly-Haney. She's my co-lead for the delivery of the Financing and Deploying Clean Energy program. Heather really keeps our wheels turning. She really just makes sure that everybody's enjoying a wonderful learning experience throughout their time in the program. So I'm going to start off by really setting the scene, so to speak. If we could just jump to this next slide. The Center for Business and the Environment at Yale, or again, CBAE, is a joint initiative between Yale's School for the Environment and School of Management. Because we sit at this intersection of those two schools, we really benefit from leveraging a fantastic network of faculty, staff, students, alumni, partners, all with diverse expertise and of course, perspectives as well, both on the business and environmental sides of Yale. And that kind of cross-pollination of ideas yields some, if we dare say ourselves, some phenomenal programming. And so that's really been our goal here for over a decade and a half now. We're educating and inspiring interdisciplinary leaders to really solve some of these huge environmental problems that we face. And of course, clean energy deployment is a really, really big one. It's the overarching topic that we're focused on here today. So I think and that includes everybody that I've just introduced, but also you all on the line with us right now. And if you end up watching this recording later, you as well. We're all eager to kind of forge ahead in our exploration of this rapidly changing space. And we're really here because we want to find ways that we can solve some of these major challenges together, all of which are related to our transition to clean energy, which is, of course, a critical element within this larger context of our climate emergency. So in short, FDCE is designed to create, educate, and connect this network of talented, passionate, purpose-driven individuals with, that come from a variety of sectors. And you'll kind of see, we'll give you a little bit more information about that a little bit later on in the call. We'll give you some details about, our participant demographics. But really, it's, we want to make sure that all of those folks understand how critical it is to continue to push forward towards this future that sees us accelerating the deployment of clean energy. So with that, I'll turn things over to Rob, who will Vincent Van Gogh ahead and paint a nice picture of clean energy and climate trends for us, while also explaining, why are we doing this learning and the sort of work that we'll be doing together and why it's so important. Next slide for Rob.
The Vincent Van Gogh ahead. Thank you, Trent, for that. Happy Friday, all. Nice to see you virtually. Thank you for joining us on this informational webinar. My role for the next 10 minutes or so is to give you a taste of what our program is about, and starting with the sort of why are we so passionate, interested, and believe it's so critical to deploy clean energy at scale everywhere we can right now. To stay in the art theme, actually, part of it comes from this image that has been created. They're the climate stripes. Some of you may have seen this graphic by Ed Hawkins, created to demonstrate the global annual temperatures from about 1850, and this version of it is, I think, into the early 2020s, where we are seeing our average annual temperatures getting hotter, hotter, hotter as we get into the later 20th century, early 21st century. Part of that story is also, if you can click once, Saki, actually click 2 more times. Thank you. So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they've just recently completed their 6th assessment report with the latest updates on the science of climate change, and it paints a pretty stark picture. Climate change has already begun. It's been causing significant changes in the climate system that we cannot undo, or at least not undo easily or without some concerted effort. This latest IPCC report also points a finger at us, at human activity and our gargantuan output of greenhouse gases as the cause. What's new in the science is that we can now attribute many more changes we're seeing at the global and the regional level to the actual human influence, and then better project our future changes that we're going to see from different amounts of emissions. The British, because I often like pulling from across the pond, had a 5 key takeaways on the BBC is that on climate is that 1, it's way worse than we thought. 2, loss and damage is real, particularly in our most climate vulnerable communities, and is outpacing our ability to adapt. 3, technology is not a silver bullet. 4, cities offer hope if they push for renewables and clean transport. And 5, there's a small window for action, but it is closing fast. And my guess is that if you're on this call, you are in that group that wants to take action. And that's really why we're focusing on people like you, folks who are currently working full-time, out there in the world trying to get stuff done. And I'll note that I love my students. I teach environmental law and policy, climate policy, energy policy to our master's students. But unlike you all, they still have a couple of years before they go out in the world and do the work that we're sort of work based on the education we're offering. What we love about this program is that we can see you in action almost real time. And that's really the spirit behind it. Saki, if you can go to the next one. Again, why now? Well, all of our countries in the world, I will put aside for a moment where the US is, we can talk about that. Well, we'll talk about that later. But at least in 2015, 197 countries agreed through the Paris Climate Agreement that we collectively have, as a planet, have to do something about the climate crisis. But what that specifically means and how it's going to be accomplished can be confusing, and there are many different ways we can get there. But we do know that we have some elements in place, and that's what really our program focuses on, the deployment of clean energy at scale. Next slide, please. Yeah, it's official. The warming of the planet is pretty drastic. This is 2023 numbers. I think 2024 has now surpassed 2023. But basically, 10 of the last hottest years on record were the last 10 years. So we are in this space. Next slide. We have to be in an all hands on deck moment. This is a United Nations Environment Program annual report on the emissions gap of how far we are from missing our goals. I like this one's the 2023 one. I love the cover art, frankly. The broken record pun as well speaks to me at a number of levels. I am a little old school. I am a little vinyl. And I do enjoy the this sort of multi-layered, broken records. We are breaking all the wrong records. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions and fossil fuel consumptions, but it also feels like policy on occasion that you are a broken record, that you keep talking about what needs to be done without seeing the results of actual stuff getting done. Next slide. According to the International Energy Agency and their Net Zero 2050 report, we need to have $4 trillion invested in the clean energy system globally each year by 2030. Side note, that's about 4% of the world's GDP needs to be in the deployment of clean energy every year when we hit 2030 in order to meet the 1.5-degree pathways. That means dramatically increasing our investment. So how are we doing? We're actually doing interestingly well. We are seeing increases in investments. We're up to 2 trillion invested in 2024. Saki, could you go to the next one as well? Oh, yeah, thank you. So that previous slide was a snapshot of the last few years. It's the same graph now expanded. You can see the sort of dramatic uptick in our deployment and investment in clean energy, a lot of it in the clean energy systems of renewables, energy storage, but also nuclear, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, grids infrastructure, that pink one at the top. Those are lots of the core and things we talk about in this course are the things that are seeing that really dramatic rise. So we're about halfway to that $4 trillion a year that we need to get to in order to be on that 1.5-degree pathway. Next slide. The interesting thing to watch in this space, and something this is actually a really interesting recent report by RMI, formerly Rocky Mountain Institute, that many of the incumbents and the modelers aren't quite capturing the fact that we're seeing this sort of exponential growth in new solar, in EVs, and battery sales. Now, granted, a lot of that is happening in China, but still significant amounts happening in Europe and in the Americas. This will be another thing that our program wrestles with, of how this sort of global approach to these transitions to renewables and electrification and efficiency, how they're transforming energy systems around the world. And you're going to, if you are part of our program, see and hear about examples from the US, from Europe, from Asia, and a growing number of examples from the Global South, which is part of our program as well. Next slide. And Trent's already sort of revealed, I am your lead if you join us on the Clean Energy Policy course. What I get really excited about is where and how policy can amplify, affect those capital flows. And a big one in the last few years, and now an interesting question for the next few years, is the role of the Inflation Reduction Act, and the bipartisan infrastructure, which were a disruptor in energy deployment in the US in particular. And this is just a snapshot from the Rhodium Group and the folks at MIT of the amount of clean energy investment happening in the US each year. And you can see again that upward curve, dramatically so. And this data ended at I believe the Q2 of 2024. Interesting to see what happens going forward. I do note go back one. The graphic there on the map of the US shows where those investments were going. They're spread all over the US intentionally to try to make clear that clean energy deployment development is not, or shouldn't be, a red or blue sort of issue. It should be something that the entire country is doing across the board. And that was an intentional element of the deployment under the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So policy can amplify clean energy capital flows, next slide, dramatically, but policy can also slow down those capital flows into clean energy. And the last few weeks, for all of you who have been, I'm sure, paying attention, has seen some busy sort of activity from the new Trump administration and a flurry of executive orders and other actions on climate clean energy deployment in particular that are worth tracking. Will be, if you join us in our cohort this coming year, will obviously be a large part of what we're talking about for the US, and its interesting implications, frankly, around the world, where the US is going to continue or not continue. Now, I say the US, but for all of you who know, and I'm someone who's a big fan, the US is not a monolith. The US is made up of 50 states and literally thousands and thousands of cities. So policy happens at the federal level, the state level, and the local level, all of which can be impactful for clean energy development and deployment. That said, you got to pay attention to what the federal government is doing, and they're doing a lot in terms of trying to pull the US out of the Paris Agreement, trying to undo some of the electric vehicle mandates. the Trump administration has an apparent sort of personal vendetta against wind and offshore wind efficiency programs, and it included those low flow toilets that he often talks about and showers. And a declaration of a national energy emergency, which I want to pause on for a moment, because when that came out, my colleagues and I were like, okay, when in history have we declared an energy emergency? It turns out there is actual law. There's a 1976 National Emergencies Act, which was a post Nixon and Watergate response to sort of executive authority that Congress wanted to set out some parameters of when you can declare an energy emergency. I will note that the oil shock of 1979, when the fall of the Iranian government led to a disruption in the oil markets and long lines at gas stations, et cetera, was never a declared energy emergency. But we're in one now, so we'll have to see what that means in terms of energy policy as well. So we're going to keep an eye on this space as we go forward, and I think will be a real dynamic part of our conversations during the FDCE program this coming year. Last slide for me, next one. So this is where I'm really what excites me most about this program and the people who are in it, who I've loved interacting with over the last 5+ years, is that we need to have all of you trying, imperfectly as you may try, to get our financial systems, our regulatory systems, our technical systems, our engineers, advocates, policymakers, everyone driving towards clean energy deployment, because you need all those pieces actually working together to have some hope for success at the levels of clean energy deployment that all the scientists, et cetera, say we need. Which to me also means that the policymakers need to understand how clean energy is financed, and the financiers need to understand the technology and the potential political risks, and the engineers need to be able to advocate for policies that will support the cool tech that they are implementing. And we need an engaged nonprofit and or government sector that can advocate for the rapid deployment of clean energy for all the reasons: climate, good financial reasons, economic development, good jobs, et cetera, in ways that are informed by knowing what the other key parts of this ecosystem are doing and how they do it. And that to me is the FDCE certificate program in a nutshell. It brings together all of these folks in a creative way, in a platform that allows that kind of cross fertilization and collaboration in such neat spaces, and leverages all of your skills you bring to the program to then enhance those and then let you build upon those with your colleagues in support. So that's my, gosh, I think Trent, I never look at the clock when I'm going, so I just go. Hopefully we're okay, but I will pass it over to you to help walk us through the curriculum and kind of what happens in the life of an FDCEer.
Job well done, Rob. Perfect timing. Before I get into my bit, I want to mention something I neglected to mention at the top of the call. Rich time for me to do this, but we do have a Q&A function and a chat function here. So if there's any burning questions you all have, feel free to submit those through each of those features. We're either doing a fantastic job so far of answering all of your questions, or you just might not have seen those yet. So just want to bring that to your attention before we move forward. I prefer to think that we're doing a good job so far.
We
All
will
right.
have a Q&A time, probably about 15 minutes at the end. If you want to save your questions for then, that's perfectly fine. Hopefully we'll get some of those questions answered throughout the presentation.
Perfect. All right. So as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we're really fortunate to be bringing this program to you from our space here at the intersection of the School of the Environment and the School of Management at Yale. And we're lucky enough to have a vast network available to us. Sak, if you could jump to the next slide, you'll see kind of a snapshot of that network. And a lot of the folks you see here, really, this is only a fraction of the faculty and external partners that we have and that we've been involved with. And who have worked on the creation and delivery of this program year to year. I want to point your attention to Rob there. He's front and center at the bottom of the graphic. as we have said, he leads our clean energy policy course, and we'll get more into how each of those courses look in a little bit here, but really wanted to present this web to you all, not just as a nod to these folks' fantastic contributions, but also as kind of a visual representation of how all of this subject matter is interrelated. So if we can jump to the next slide. Let's first reference the timeline we have there at the very bottom. That's going to note some of the important dates we have within the 2025-2026 program cycle. The program is about 10 months long, and it's going to be a blend of self-paced, asynchronous, and synchronous courses. Starting over there on the far left, and so now we're up in where you see the kind of infographic. Starting on the far left, you'll notice the HTSO acronym. That stands for How to Study Online. And the purpose of that course is to really get everybody acclimated to working in an online environment. And I think folks really seem to find this helpful because a good number of people have not really been in a web-based academic environment before or just in quite some time. So it's really set up as a course to help you get your bearings before you jump into our actual coursework. Just like orientation, which is the next item there, is set up to kind of introduce you to your fellow cohort members, and then members of the Yale faculty and staff as well. So orientation, it's 1 week long. It's entirely online, so you don't have to travel all the way to New Haven for it. There are mandatory midday sessions throughout that week, and then we do host optional sessions as well that should aid you in really setting you up for success in the program. I think it's a fantastic way to start the program off, and you know, we'll be the first to acknowledge that being online, learning online, it can be somewhat of an isolating experience. And so from the very start of the program, in orientation and onward, we want to establish that at the heart of the program is this kind of community building effort. And we'll hear a little bit more about how we make that possible soon here. But orientation is really just an opportunity for you to share some of your experiences as you come into the program, and then maybe also share what you'd like to glean from your time in the program. So once that concludes, hopefully you'll have this renewed kind of hunger for learning. Things will really kick into gear with our first foundations course, of which there's two. So this first one is called Energy Foundations, and that's set up as a primer for our first core course, Clean Energy Policy. So in Energy Foundations, you're going to be familiarizing yourself with some of these like fundamental energy concepts that warm you up for that core course. Clean Energy Policy is led by none other than who? If you said Professor Rob Klee, boy, are you right. I cannot believe you guessed that. The course, like all of our core courses, is 8 weeks long. And the overarching goal of that course is to kind of learn about the role policy plays in shaping this transition to a clean energy economy. I want to highlight one piece of our coursework, which is our policy memo. And that's, I think, an assignment folks really enjoy. It asks participants to write to their local or national policymakers on a topic of their choice. We really appreciate it when folks actually take this even a step further and like submit their policy memos to those policymakers. That's not required, but it's really cool when that actually happens. And then we'll also kind of like pick and choose some of those policy memos to elevate onto our Yale Clean Energy Forum. And I can drop the link to that into the chat a little bit later if you'd like to take a look at that. After you finish up the Clean Energy Policy course, you'd move on to Technology Transitions. That's our second core course. And that unit's going to be a little bit more quantitative than Clean Energy Policy was. So let's say, hypothetically, like you are working on Capitol Hill. That policy memo assignment probably is going to be like somewhat of your bread and butter. You're very well versed in that. And then as you turn to tech transition, some of the assignments might be a little bit more challenging at first because they are more quantitative and you haven't had as much exposure to that content. But do not worry. We have this fantastic support team available to you. And that's just set up to assist you if you run into any challenges. So really what I want you to take away from this bit is the course, yes, while it's more quantitative, it does also focus on energy technologies that are available to us today, how those energy technologies work, and then what their associated limitations might be as we take these steps towards a low carbon future. After you finish up tech transitions, we're going to move into our winter break. And around that time, we ask folks to kind of take a step back, reflect on your accomplishments thus far in the program. And that, to be clear, does not mean like a marathon review session where you're like going over everything you've learned, re-quizzing yourself. It's rather time to take stock of your progress as you're really heading into this back half of the program. So when you come back from winter break, you'd be entering into the second foundations course. You see it there, Finance Foundations. Similar to how Energy Foundations prepared you for clean energy policy, Finance Foundations is set up to prepare you for our third core course, Renewable Energy Project Finance. So in that Foundations course, you're familiarizing yourself with some of these like fundamental concepts of energy finance. And if you haven't really been using it, you'll get a lot more comfortable with Microsoft Excel as well. In Renewable Energy Project Finance, again, second to last core course. It's led by Professor Dan Gross. He's a lecturer here at Yale University, but then he's also the director of Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund. In that course, you're going to learn a little bit more about, these foundational principles of project finance, both from the perspective of the renewable energy investor as well as the developer. And then to bring things home, you'll reach the final core course of the program, the fourth one. And the focus in that course is innovation in each of the areas that we've studied so far. So innovation in policy, technology, and finance. That course will be co-led by Richard Kaufman and the newest addition to our team, Jahi Wise. Excited to have him on board. And the core question of that course is, how do you create a market for clean tech and really just move capital where it needs to go? We start off with this emphasis on green banks. And I have to say, this is a good place to note. If you're at all interested in green banks, I'm happy to report that tomorrow we have the first of our so-called AMA or Ask Me Anything sessions, and we have our friend and former participant Sarah Pine from the Connecticut Green Bank joining us there. So that's coming up tomorrow at noon. Feel free to join for that one because you'll get kind of like a candid idea of what it's like to be a participant from those folks. Thanks, Saki. Yeah, next slide. So all of that I just described somehow fits into 10 months. And I'll get into how we do that in a moment here. So, but first, let's take a bit of a deeper dive into the curriculum. And hopefully I can give you a picture of how this integrates a bit. So again, I mentioned we have those two foundations courses. That's where you're going to get an introduction to, let's say, basic energy units. You'll learn about things like bond math. You maybe get a better idea of how to understand and apply the time value of money, the laws of thermodynamics, and thermal and electrical efficiency. And then you'll move to the right there, again, looking at this infographic, and you'll enter some of the core coursework. So for example, in CEP, you might learn, and CEP is Clean Energy Policy, sorry. You might learn about utility business models and the challenges associated with energy efficiency programs. Then you move into tech transitions, and you'll get a better idea of like the effects of efficiency interventions on energy systems. You'll move on to finance foundations and renewable energy project finance. And you'll get a chance to kind of review the ways that projects sell electricity to the grid. You'll take a look at the concepts of risk allocation and PPAs. And then finally, you'll move to innovation, that last core course. And that's where you might consider and maybe even replicate models for scaling efficiency programs. So that's kind of a quick overview of how you might integrate some of our material and content as you move throughout each of our core courses. Next slide, please. All right, so this will be my final slide. This is just going to give you a bit of a quick breakdown of your commitments week to week. And these are, for the most part, mandatory commitments. I'll make the distinction. So we'll also talk about some optional things, but starting with mandatory things. So how do I asked the question, how do we fit this coursework into 10 months? Because it's quite a bit. You're going to be going at the pace of one module per week for 8 weeks through each of our core courses. And we have that set up to take, as you see there at the bottom of your screen, the average Yale learner about 5 hours per week. And we're going to, again, acknowledge there's no such thing as the quote unquote average Yale learner. But the average person that joins us should take around 5 hours per week, as you see the expected breakdown there. So 2 to 3 hours of working your way through content. And that's going to include readings, quizzes, and discussion questions. 1 to 2 hours of video playback. That's that item on the far right there is meant to represent that. And then the item in the middle is a 1 hour live session that occurs every Thursday, midday, with a Yale faculty member like Rob, or a guest expert. And sometimes if we're lucky, we'll have both. So an example of that would be the faculty member interviews or has a conversation with the guest expert. And then there's opportunities throughout, regardless of who the expert is on the line, for Q&A, just interspersed either throughout the exchange or the presentation. By and large, all assignments are going to be released on Mondays at noon. And then they're due the following Monday just before noon, 11:59 a.m. And this is all Eastern time. We have those live sessions again, I said, every Thursday, midday. And then also I mentioned we have a nice support system in place, which includes our participants, because we said we wanted to foster this network starting in orientation. But it also includes a wonderful set of teaching assistants who together with our faculty and staff kind of make up what we call a teaching team. And our teaching team hosts optional office hours. Sometimes the faculty member is actually able to make time to host office hours as well, and that's always a treat. So finally, in addition to all of that, we want to make sure that we're organizing and advertising various opportunities for networking throughout the year. This program again entirely online, but we'd love to facilitate some in-person interaction as well. That's where the magic happens. And so I'll start with the biggest one that comes to mind, which is our Yale Clean Energy Conference. This past fall, we hosted our second ever FDCE alumni reunion at that conference. It was a blast. Looking forward to doing that again in the coming year. And then actually in the coming weeks, we'll be hosting a couple of meetups in person for FDC years, both current and past FDC years, in a couple of cities, including Boston next week at RE+. And then we'll have another one coming up in Denver a little bit later. And so with that, I'm going to pause and I will turn things over to Heather.
Hello. I'm going to share my screen and give you kind of just a sneak peek into what the actual experience looks like for a learner. So let me just get started. That. Okay. So this is what our site Canvas looks like. And let me just say, I think I can get through this all in 10 minutes, so we'll have about 15 minutes left for questions. If not, we'll save at least 10 minutes for questions at the end. So this is what our Canvas site looks like. Our online learning platform is called Canvas, and this is what all of your courses will be done through, and they all kind of look very similar to this. Once you get through that how to study online pre-course and the energy foundations, as well as orientation, your first core course will start. And that's this clean energy policy course, again, led by Rob Klee. And you'll see just a general overview of the course and what that looks like. We always have announcements at the top here. Trent and I communicate at least weekly. At the top of every week, every new module launch, there will be some important updates, and we just like to stay in touch, and we'll also post reminders and things regularly about office hours and stuff like that. So you'll see a general overview of the course. You'll always have access to the full course calendar that we went over, and a general overview of the curriculum. And then we have these quick buttons at the bottom to navigate through the course. This week button will take you to the week's module with a checklist. And then there will be past weeks available to you if you want to go back and look at things from other weeks. That's another quick link. Live events, as we mentioned, there are weekly live sessions that are led by faculty and guest experts. And there are also regular office hours led by our online mentors, who are students at either YSE or SOM, who are experts in the course content and are here to guide you. We have about 5 to 6 office hours held by them weekly, so they're at varying times. And then there's a course glossary. If there's any just terminology that you might encounter through the course, there's always a sort of quick guide. You can access it here or here. And this week, you'll see there's a full work plan for every week, and it just guides you through in a checklist format of the videos that you are required to watch. Remember that these are broken down into short segments. So as we said, it's about 1 to 2 hours of video content per week. So these will never add up to too much, even though it looks like a lot. They're short segments to keep things manageable, and will sort of guide you through various like discussions that you'll have with other folks, and quizzes and checking your learning and things like that throughout the course. So that's what one module looks like. And of course, the live session is on here as a required event. We also have a download button where you can like physically check off things if you'd like to do that. And so that's just a general overview of what every week will look like. Of course, every week is different, and there will be a different variety of assignments and readings and quizzes, and some weeks are heavier than others, as you can expect from any course that you might take. You'll also see on the side here, we have a link to a community platform, and I just wanted to point that out. That's what our sort of in-groups network looks like. This is like a private network essentially for the Yale Clean Energy Collaborative, and you will be a part of that as an FDCE learner. You'll see we have had 6 cohorts so far. The next cohort will be our 7th group, if you can believe it. There's a private group created for each of the cohorts, so you'll have sort of a individual forum to communicate with your fellow cohort members, ask questions of one another, sort of bounce ideas around, and share events and opportunities with one another as well. And then you'll have access to sort of the more global platform of the Yale Clean Energy Collaborative, which if you look here, we've got, you can see just how wide reaching our network is and how many people we have that we're connected with all over the world. We have a very global cohort of learners every year. And you'll also see some events and opportunities, as Trent mentioned. There is the Yale Clean Energy Conference every year that you are invited to. There's various online events that you're also welcome to sign up for and attend. And then you'll see other things up here like just extra clean energy news, jobs and opportunities that are posted just for this network. And we really this is an excellent part of our program, and we love our learners to be able to connect with each other and program alums. So that's just another benefit of the program. Now, Saki, if you can go back to the slides. All right, thank you. This is our colleague Saki. I don't know if we introduced him, but he delivers another one of our online programs at CBAY, which is the Clean and Equitable Energy Development Program. So you may get to know him if you explore that program as well. So thanks, Saki, for running our slides. This year, this particular cohort has 135 total participants. They come from all over the world. And this is sort of the breakdown of years of experience that we have this year. In the past, we've had sort of other mixes of this. It just happens to shake out this way this year, but we have a really good mix of where people are coming from and what level of experience that they have. Some people are just getting into a career and they're looking to expand their expertise in just all of the clean energy realm. And some people have a little bit more expertise already in one or several of these areas, and they're looking for an expanded understanding of, say, project finance or technology. So it's a good mix, and we love having such a diverse cohort. Go to the next slide. This is what this current cohort looks like. So we have learners in the Global South, we have folks in Europe and Australia this year, and the Pacific. The majority of our learners are from the US, but at least 30% are from outside of the US. So we have a really global reach. We hope that our 12 o'clock Eastern time live sessions work for most. People are sort of joining at all hours of the day, but it's a really excellent group, and we see a variety every year. We'll see we have an expanding range of countries that folks are coming from. Next slide. There we go. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to apply to the program. If I will drop the link to this in the chat in just a moment, but this is hopefully you've seen our website, and you'll click on the Apply to Certificate button down on the left panel once you're ready to start an application. And you'll see, you'll click that orange button that says Start Your Application, and you'll have an opportunity to create a learner profile on the Yale Online system. And that will allow you to sort of start your application and then log in and out and complete the application on your own time. On this page, you'll see a lot more information than what is here on this slide. You'll be able to see, if you scroll, you'll see a checklist of things that you'll need in order to apply. I really recommend downloading that checklist and taking a look before you get your application started. You'll also see just some general information about what we want to know in the application process, and you should be able to get all of your questions answered on that page, or our FAQ page is also very comprehensive if you have more questions. Next slide. So once you click sign up on that Yale Online platform, you'll be directed to create an account in our Global Learner Access Support System, which is Yale-wide online learning support system. So all of the online certificate programs all throughout Yale University are housed here. And you'll create a short profile. Once you click submit, you will be directed to this Authenticator app. So I just want to go over this really quick. It says connect to an Authenticator app. So this means that you will have to download an app on your smartphone in order to do what's called a multi-factor authentication. You may already have, this is just for security. We want all of our learners in the Yale system to be verified and secure. So you may already have an Authenticator app. Common ones are Duo Mobile, for instance. So if you have one on your phone already, that's excellent. If you don't, you can download one. Salesforce Authenticator is one example that you can also download. So that's just kind of a little hurdle that you have to jump through in order to get into our system. But hopefully you can move through pretty quickly once you have that done. And I'll let you know how, like, if there are any questions that you encounter during this process, there's an email that you can reach out to, which is onlineprograms@yale.edu, and I'll drop that in the chat as well. So if you run into any problems with this GLASS system, that will be your communication. But let's just go to the next slide and I'll show you what it looks like to actually apply to the FDCE program. So once you get through all of that, easy, you will just click on the Financing and Deploying Clean Energy program, which is this program that you would love to apply to, hopefully. And then the next slide, you'll see an apply button at that top right. So those are sort of all those steps that you need to take in order just to get to our application. But once you click apply, and once you're in our application system, that's when you'll be able to complete your application. That's where I recommend taking a look at that application checklist before you get started on that. But you'll know there's basic information that you'll have to fill out, just the usual kinds of things. And then there will be an opportunity to submit some essay questions and some transcripts and educational information too. Next slide. This is our final slide. We just want you to know what it looks like once you have gone through all 10 months of the program, completed all 4 courses successfully, you will get this beautiful digital certificate from Yale, from the Yale School of the Environment and the Yale School of Management. And it will say that you have completed the program. So that's kind of what the general certificate looks like. So I think we can stop sharing slides for now and we'll jump into the Q&A.
All right.
Thanks, Trent, for dropping those links in the chat.
Yeah, of course, of course. And okay, so I've answered a couple of these in text and then saved a couple of them to answer live, but we'll also we'll get to all of these. Okay, I'm going to start from the top. Is any part of the program that covers community-based renewable energy or community solar projects? Yes, we certainly touch on that. I remember in our innovation course. We also have had, I can remember, several participants who have worked in that space. One of our past program ambassadors, Nora Barger. So I'll also drop the link to our ambassadors page on our website. Also worked in that space and would be a fantastic resource to discuss. I think this is a point where I would love to highlight that community platform again. I think Heather did a great job of showing us kind of like where folks are hailing from, but you can also see like the industries that they hail from as well. So yes, there will be part of the curriculum that does touch on that, but then there's also like a number of resources that you can kind of reach out to talk further. Kalila asks, how closely can we work with these faculty members? Are there opportunities for mentorship? I can start with this one. Rob, you might have thoughts to add. Other folks might have thoughts to add. I think this one is best answered with like it's not even a story. It's just like the mention of the fact that like some professors and faculty members are able to offer office hours. Others, it's a little bit more difficult to fit into their schedule. So I'm just saying that to manage expectations. Like not every single faculty member that you learn from is going to be able to offer office hours weekly. That being said, we've seen some fantastic relationships develop between faculty members and our participants. One that I would like, I think is kind of like a perfect example is we had a participant in the FDCE 22 cohort actually develop a patent with one of the kind of like leads of our tech transitions course, Professor Michael Oristalio. And so that was really encouraging to see. It was really cool to kind of follow that process all the way through. So in short, your answers are depends on the faculty member and yes. Okay, let's see.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
Rob.
Trent, I would only add it also depends on the participant. And my similar example is on occasion, I've had FDCE participants who've become advisors for some of my brick and mortar students who are doing independent study projects, or I teach a capstone course where I have students work in teams with project hosts. And sometimes one of my FDCEers, former FDCEers, becomes a project host where they get access to, 2 or 3 terrific, School of the Environment or SOM master students to work with them on a product launch or on a policy challenge they're having. So those types of things happen. They're organic in many ways, but they're, again, one of the things I love about this program are the intersections that can happen beyond the program, again, through that kind of networking aspect.
Great addition, Rob. Thank you. Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Next one. Oh, sorry, Heather.
I was going to just take on the one that asked, let me see here. Where did I just put it?
Disappeared
Oh,
on you.
how are the courses graded? There we go. I forgot to mark it as that I wanted to answer it. How are the courses graded? So we went over this a little bit in the sort of Canvas course, but each course is actually graded on a different grading scheme. So it depends on the faculty. Again, just kind of like a regular on-campus course. But the grading system that we use is pass-fail. So there's it's either a complete or incomplete. We do keep track of grades on that Canvas platform. So that's our equivalent to Blackboard, is that Canvas platform that we use. And so we keep track of grades, but those grades are not like an official transcript grade. So as like our learners are not matriculated Yale students, there's no official transcripts. We're really just keeping track of those grades to measure whether you've completed the course successfully or not. So our completion threshold is 70%. So if you've participated in the quizzes and the assignments and the discussions throughout the course, and you have completed at least 70% of those to satisfaction, then that will be considered a passing grade and you'll be moved on to the next course.
Perfect. I'm happy to take this next one from Hannah Korn, joining us from Elemental. Thank you for joining us, Hannah. So given the rapidly shifting political landscape in the US, does this course adapt its content to reflect current events and evolving realities, or does it follow more of a standardized, consistent curriculum year over year? Fantastic question. That's one we would certainly expect to get. And I think you'll be happy to hear that it is certainly more of the former. So really happy again to have Rob on the line because he went through this process with us with clean energy policy to begin this year, and every year prior. Yeah, it is an endless updating process. I think we certainly follow current events and make sure that we're giving you the most up-to-date information that we can. And then I think in addition to that, I'm not sure if we mentioned this on the call, but we do have like I might even say too many surveys, but like we take a good number of surveys from folks who are in the program, both at the end of each week, so at the end of each of those core course modules, and then at the end of the course as a whole. And then we actually are actively reviewing that feedback and making changes based off of what people would like to see. I'll give an example for the course that we're actually currently working on with our participants, which is Renewable Energy Project Finance. In that course, we get kind of end of week responses to those survey questions. We will review those actually like every single week and give that direct feedback to Dan. And then he actually runs his live sessions as more of like an office hour. Oftentimes, I mean, it's quite a mix. Like sometimes he'll review case studies. Sometimes he'll provide kind of like assistance with some of the models that we're working on. And then other times he'll kind of do like a round robin of answering questions that folks submit. But then beyond that, we certainly collect all of those responses and make updates to our content on a running basis. So yeah, fantastic question, Hannah.
Trent, I would just add that a lot of our online content gets at some core principles and foundational sort of, things that do have, year to year, they stay kind of consistent in the sort of policy approaches, for example, or policy tools you might use. But then another place that we utilize our live sessions as a place to say, okay, what just happened in the world? And those interviews with that live guest expert, they're reacting real time. And that's a way that we bring in the up to the minute, as well as having some foundational sort of core teaching that does have that regardless of what's happening in the rest of the world is still valuable to know.
Somebody asked about the process to apply for a scholarship. Thank you for asking. I forgot to cover this when I talked about applications. It is all included within that application portal. So you'll just, there's some information about the scholarship, but basically it's just an extra essay. So it'll ask during the application if you are applying for a scholarship, and it will allow you to submit an additional essay. Now, keep in mind that scholarship, it is the 3 Cairns Fellowship, and that is only available to learners who are in the Global South, who currently reside in the Global South. So that is a 100% scholarship that we are able to give to a very small number of learners every year. So please do apply if you are a strong candidate, and keep in mind that that's just a Global South piece. There are some additional scholarships available that you can indicate that you are interested in a reduced tuition rate, and give us as much information as possible in those essays so we can make those decisions.
Thank you, Heather. I'm answering this one in text as we speak, but since I'm already talking, I'll answer it live. What's the acceptance rate of this program? Unfortunately, Yale policy doesn't actually allow us to publicly share acceptance rate statistics, so I'm sorry about that one. But yeah, that's that. Is
Someone
there? Oh, sorry. You can go, Heather.
Oh, sorry. Someone asked if there's an in-person component of the How to Study Online and orientation courses. And there's not. It's fully online. We want this program to be accessible to everyone all over the globe, so people who can and cannot travel. That being said, we really encourage folks to attend that Clean Energy Conference in the fall if you are able to make it to New Haven in early November. That's a really great time to connect with your cohort. It's kind of we kind of treat it as like a secondary orientation if you're able to join us. We have like a reunion there, and it's just a really great opportunity to connect. It's totally optional, and we have like, I think we had about 15 to 20% of the cohort was able to join us this year, something around that. It might have even been more, 30% possibly. And then we also have alumni who come to that as well. And so you can connect with learners who have been in the program and who have been in our other certificate program as well. So highly encouraged, not at all required.
I'm going out of order here, I recognize, but this one jumped out at me. Dave Silman asks, might brand new Yale faculty member Steph Spears be able to pay us a visit during the program? I mean, ask and maybe you shall receive. We are working with Steph on some exciting opportunities in the months ahead. She is not like a program faculty member as things stand, but we would certainly love to work with her more in the future. Let's see. Tarun, I see your question there, but I'm going to jump to somebody whose question we haven't yet answered. Christian Alafa, hopefully I pronounced that right, asked, is there a cap on the number of 3 Cairns Climate Program for the Global South Scholarship available? Also, are there any specific eligibility requirements? So you'll actually be able to find information regarding those eligibility requirements online, and we can share that link in the chat momentarily. Christian, I am not entirely sure if there is a cap. I think in the past we've seen around 10 be the cap. But I also do not want to be quoted on that. But that is the number that is in my head at the moment.
Yeah, that was our cap last year. It's kind of every year, I think there's a separate sort of decision that's made. So we can't say officially if it's going to be 10 this year.
Perfect clarification. Thank you, Heather. We can just jump to the one right after that. Does the program offer any career resources like job postings? Heather, would you like to take this one? Because I know you actually kind of detailed this a little bit.
Sure, that's in our community platform, you'll see a jobs and opportunities section at the very top there. And so those are just job postings that are available to anybody who's in the program or in the Clean Energy Collaborative Network. So they should be very relevant.
Okay, and recognizing that we are currently at time, I'm going to encourage. So let's see. I'm just going through just to see if there's anything here that isn't answered on our website, so that we can make sure you get an answer. We'll quick fire this one. How many students are typically in a cohort? That number varies year by year, I think, based on number of applicants, quality of applicants. So can't give you an exact figure on that one. I will say the range has been kind of between 120 to 160 at least in the past few years. So I hope that is helpful. Is there overlap with the Clean and Equitable Energy Development Program that Heather mentioned earlier and that our wonderful team member Saki on the line is working with? There is some overlap in the slight overlap in bits of the content. They are distinct programs. We actually probably will end up encouraging folks who have interests in both to take both. So there'll be more information about that online as well. If somebody is from the Global South but works in the U.S. With the Global South, can they not apply for the scholarships? Oh, that one's definitely online. If you are from the Global South, yes, that like 3 Cairns scholarship will be available to you. And then let's see, office hours. If they're limited, what is the space for students to ask questions on the content? That will again primarily be the live session. That's when you're going to get like live time to kind of do some Q&A. But then we also have like those discussion questions that Heather detailed available via Canvas. And then there's also the community platform where there's multiple different forums and just kind of like feeds that you can communicate with folks through. Let's see. Continue to scroll. How much of a technical foundation does this course provide? We get introductions to the physics of transporting energy, the technical requirements of the transmission grid, chemistry behind how solar panels work. I would encourage you to take a look at we have like a pretty exhaustive curriculum summary available online, detailing the like major highlights of what is involved in each of our 4 core courses and foundations courses. I think you will see the answers to that one there, and then so to run same thing for you. I would encourage you to look at those curriculum summaries online. All right, folks, we want to be. Oh, sorry, Heather, did you have a last comment?
I was just going to say last year we had somebody who was also working in decarbonizing aviation, and it's certainly touched on, and it's also it's something good to note is that it's really encouraged for our participants to share their expertise with one another too. So we're really excited to have people from all like various expertise and different pieces of renewable energy that people are working in. And so we're really hoping that people who are already well steeped in some of this information are able to come and join us and share what you know as well.
Perfect. Great. All right, and again, there's ample opportunity for you to like if you want to hear from somebody specific or about a specific subject, like we're happy to consider kind of like bringing somebody in for one of those live sessions, for example, to discuss that further. Okay, we have run a little bit over time. We want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we will end here. Again, one of the first questions we received was, will this be available via recording? Yes, it will be posted to our website as soon as this, of course, has processed. We'd love to thank everybody on the line for their time, and we look forward to having you all in the program. Please apply, and then if you have any questions, shoot us a message. You can shoot us a message at cbay.admissions@yale.edu. And then again, if you have questions about kind of like that application process through the portal that Heather kind of gave us a tour through, that address will be onlineprograms@yale.edu. All right. Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.